Welcome, movie tourists and Bible enthusiasts. Today we are diving into the 2000 animated film, Joseph, King of Dreams. We're going to go on a quest for truth here and look at some of the Bible verses behind the story and how accurate this film really is. Like, did Pharaoh really wear that much eyeliner? Who knows, maybe it's Maybelline. Let's get right into it. Our story begins with Jacob, son of Isaac, grandson of Abraham. Jacob was named Israel by God. Genesis 35:10. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel." So he named him Israel. Now this verse is important as in other verses we cover today, it will refer to him by both Jacob and Israel. He and his wife Rachel are having a baby, but according to Genesis 30 verse 1, it was no easy task. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." So melodramatic. But in verse 22 we read, "Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, 'God has taken away my disgrace.' And she named him Joseph." We then get a song called Miracle Child, such a fun song. Joseph, by the way, is voiced by Ben Affleck and his older brother Judah is voiced by Mark Hamill. So yeah, we have both Batman and the Joker in this film. Genesis 37:2. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, and the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. So now we've reached our first inconsistency. It is shown in the Bible that Jacob had many wives, and they show only one in the film. The movie also never mentions Joseph's sister Dinah. We immediately see favoritism from Jacob. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. Joseph is better at everything he does, and Jacob tells him to learn instead of doing hard labor. And yes, they give him a beautiful coat of many colors, which makes everyone so jealous. And this means that Joseph is the first and maybe only fashionista in the whole Bible. Look at that supermodel. He's a regular Calvin Klein. You know, they should really make Joseph's coat of many colors part of Calvin Klein's fall collection. I'd buy it. When his brothers saw that their father loved him way more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Poor Joseph, he was basically Rudolph, and all the other reindeer just laughed and called him names. Joseph has his first dream in the movie. The art style here is very similar to that of Van Gogh, and I love it. Now this dream is not actually in the Bible, and I believe that this dream was used to show the viewer that Joseph's dreams can actually tell the future, as we see in the next scene an attack on the sheep, which is basically what the dream shows. We then get another dream, and this dream is actually biblical. Genesis 37 verse 5. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of the dream and what he had said. Now in the movie, this dream ends with them all turning into stars. But in the Bible, the stars are actually part of another dream. Genesis 37:9. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." And in the next scene, things get real intense. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Yeah, that's definitely not in the film. They never say anything about killing Joseph in the movie. Verse 20. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Luckily, in the Bible, there was actually a voice of reason. Joseph's brother, Reuben. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and they threw him into the cistern. That night a rope drops down, and Joseph thinks his brothers are here to save him. But boy, is he wrong. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him. And now we have reached the movie tour pit stop, where I test your knowledge of the film with some movie trivia. This question is, how much did Joseph's brothers sell him for? Was it A, 10 pieces of copper, B, 20 pieces of silver, C, a donkey, or D, 4 magic beans? Lock in your answer down below and we'll answer it at the end of the tour. Now in the Bible, Reuben actually later does come by the cistern, and Joseph is already gone at that point. He had every intention of rescuing him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. Potiphar and his wife are so impressed with Joseph. Genesis 39:4, Joseph found favor in his eyes and he became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. You immediately start to see just how interested Potiphar's wife is in the slave. Look at those bedroom eyes. Genesis 39:6. Now Vic was well built and handsome. I kid, it's Joseph, but wouldn't that be such the ultimate compliment if the Bible says that you're well built and handsome? Like, who could argue that? Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." Now they do show this in a tasteful manner since it is a kid's movie, but in reality, this lady was way more aggressive than shown. Verse 10, and though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Every single day, this wannabe cougar tried to get with this wannabe fashionista. It's like she's trying to audition to be in Cougar Town or something. One day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants were inside. She caught him by the cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But he left the cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. Now this lady doesn't take rejection very well at all because she goes in tattletales on him, but she does it with a lie. When his master heard the story his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me," he burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. One thing they don't show in the film is how the Lord helped Joseph gain favor with the warden here. Verse 22, so the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. By the way, if you're new to the movie tour, I just want to thank you so much for dropping by. My name is Vic, and if you're enjoying this video, please do hit that subscribe button. And I also do have another video on the Prince of Egypt. I'll put the link in the description if you want to check it out. Now there were other prisoners there, the royal cupbearer and the baker. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, and I squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup and put the cup in his hand." Joseph told him that his dream signifies freedom in 3 days' time. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for the Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of my basket on my head." Joseph then interprets that dream to signify death in 3 days' time. After the 3 days have passed, he restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hands. But he impaled the chief baker just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. Joseph tells the cupbearer to tell Pharaoh about him, but the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Bruh, you had one job, dude. A lot of time has passed and we see the man now has a beard and longer hair. We get the best song in the film here, "Better Than I." This, however, was not sung by Ben Affleck. It was performed by David Campbell. 2 full years have passed and now the cupbearer remembers Joseph. 2 years! Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think that the cupbearer is actually the real villain in this story. How hard is it to remember a miracle that you were part of? Joe literally told you the future, man. Come on! Potiphar comes to Joseph and tells him that Pharaoh needs him to tell him about a dream. Pharaoh's dream was him by the Nile with 7 healthy cows grazing nearby. But 7 more sick cows come and eat the healthy cattle. Then he has another dream. 7 ears of grain are eaten by 7 more bad grains. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are the 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine." Joseph tells him to collect the grain and prepare for a famine, and Pharaoh agrees, putting him in charge of everything. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but without your word no one will lift a hand or foot in all of Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zapanoth-Paneah and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, to be his wife. And yes, that verse is basically a modern day tongue twister. Try saying that 3 times fast. Asenath, by the way, is played by Jodie Benson, or who you may know her as Ariel from The Little Mermaid. They then prepare for the upcoming famine by growing a lot of crops. Joe and Asenath also have 2 babies here. And then it finally happens, famine and drought. And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. Joseph's brothers even show up to buy food. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." Now in the movie, Joseph solely arrests Simeon, but in the Bible, he actually arrests them all for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison while the rest of you go to take the grain back for your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me so that your words may be verified and that you may not die." The brothers went home, and when it was time to return, they hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon." Fun fact, I also have a younger brother named Benjamin. Hey bro. Now in the movie, Joseph almost seems surprised that he has another brother named Benjamin. But in the Bible, it actually says that Benjamin was born before Joseph was even sold to slavery, and his mom dies during childbirth. Joseph then releases Simeon and invites them to dinner. Then he gets an idea. Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain." And he did as Joseph said. The next day he arrests them all and accuses them of theft. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. Then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the eldest to the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. He tells the guards to arrest Ben, and then all the other brothers asked to be taken in his place. Joseph is surprised, asking why they would sacrifice himself for a half-brother who was spoiled by their father. "How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come on my father." So he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." He introduces his wife to them and invites all of their families to the kingdom. He finally gets to see his father again, and the movie ends there. Now there is actually a stage musical of the story called Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. It's a wonderful adaptation of the Bible story, and if it's ever in your area, I highly recommend you check it out. Now let's get back to the movie tour pit stop. The question was, how much did Joseph's brothers sell him for?
I told you they'd come for me.
As agreed, 20 pieces of silver.
If you got it right, I want you to like the video. Also, if you want to learn how accurate the Prince of Egypt is to the Bible, then that video is here. We'll see you next time on the Movie Tour.